Good morning. On behalf of the Centrale Bank from Curaçao and St. Maarten, the CBCS, I want to welcome you to our webinar titled Mastering Financial Resilience, Local Edition. My name is Shakina Dare, and I will be your moderator for today. The purpose of this webinar is to discuss research conducted by our colleague Ellie of the CBCS and also research studies conducted by a student and lecturers from the University of Curaçao. This webinar is held in the context of World Investor Week 2020. The World Investor Week is an initiative of the International Organization of Securities Commissions. The WIW, which is World Investor Week, is a global campaign to promote investor education and protection. In this particular case, so for this webinar, we extended this focus towards consumer protection, toward business protection, and therefore the topic Master Financial Resilience will cover consumers' perspectives, but also business owners' perspectives. We will have 4 speakers in total. We will start with Mr. Ediral Susana. He is a full-time staff member at the University of Curaçao and teaches economics and finance and investments. He holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and also a master's degree in business administration. Currently, he is working on his PhD in management from Walden University in Minneapolis. Today, he will discuss the financial behavior impact during the COVID-19 lockdown on the island of Curaçao. Subsequently, we will have Mr. Karim Saad. He holds a bachelor's degree in applied science from the University of Curaçao. He is an upcoming personal finance professional. His experience is very varied. So you have change management, cybersecurity, and data analytics and security. He is currently also very much engaged into financial literacy and resilience in Curaçao and also more islands within the Dutch Caribbean. He is also a GCI CLIC member in order to promote positive change. After those 2 presentations, we will have a short Q&A session where you will be able to provide your feedback and also to ask questions. After the Q&A session, we will have the other 2 speakers. The first one will then be Mr. Guido Royer Jr. He is a scientific associate with the Faculty of Social Sciences and Economics at the University of Curaçao. He is focused on small states, islands, territories, and has also experience in the area of the Caribbean and Latin America research. And he has also served on several boards within the Dutch Caribbean, including Curaçao. He will discuss today entrepreneurship and business financial resilience. Last but not least, we will have our colleague Eliangela Ali Musket. She is an examiner of the Investment Institutions and Trust Supervision Department at the CBCS. She has more than 20 years of experience in the financial services sector. And in the past, she has also been a training partner where she facilitated several product and soft skills trainings. She holds a bachelor's degree in international business and languages and a master's degree in executive financial management. She will discuss roadmap to financial resilience and also, as indicated previously, the results of a short survey conducted by the CBCS online. After those 2 presentations, we will again have a Q&A session where you will be able once again to provide your feedback and also to ask your questions. Important for me to mention is that all questions that you have or comments or whatever that you would like to talk about, please include all those in the question box in your WebEx control panel. This will then be discussed or your questions will be answered by the presenters during the Q&A sessions. So please feel free. You can select in the chat box to everyone. And then, or I think the participants do not have the option to send it to everyone, but you can just send it to me as the host, and then I will repeat the questions so that the presenters can answer your questions. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our first presenter, which is Mr. Ediral Susana. The floor is yours. Ediral, remember to unmute yourself.
Yes, my bad. My apologies. Give me just a second. Okay, can you guys see the presentation? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. First of all, I would like to thank the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Maarten for the opportunity to present some data today I collected earlier this year during the COVID-19 pandemic. What I'm going to talk about today is basically the financial behavior impact during the COVID-19 lockdown on the island of Curacao. As you guys remember, I believe it was March, April, and May, we had the pleasure to be at home more often than we wanted. I believe when we were on total lockdown, each, depending on your license plate, you were able to leave the house twice a week to go get groceries, get the things, the basic things that each family or each individual needed. So I want to basically start telling you the objective of the study. Before I talk about that, how did this come about? I noticed in my own household, I'm married, I have 3 kids, and we noticed that since we weren't going out as much, our spending pattern, spending behavior changed quite a bit. We didn't really pay attention to it at the beginning because we didn't think the process was going to be too long. We thought we were going to be indoors maybe for a month, a couple of weeks, but it ended up going longer than that. So the curiosity came about to actually, okay, let me go ahead and conduct a simple survey as to how people's spending behavior, saving behavior has changed during that period of time. So the objective of the study was basically to explore whether the COVID-19 induced lockdown would have an impact on the financial behavior of individuals, and if so, how. I want to reiterate that the study was conducted in Papiamento, which is the native language of Curacao. And it consisted of, it was very simple, as I stated earlier, but it consisted of 6 financial behavior questions and 4 demographic questions. Okay, so what did I specifically measure? I wanted to look at changes in spending behavior, changes in saving behavior, and also specific expense and spending adjustments due to the COVID-19 lockdown. Next, I want to share with you some of the demographics. This survey consisted of 160 online respondents. Everybody was able to respond to the questions online. We distributed the questionnaire through social media, mainly. And some of the demographics, 75.6% of all the participants or respondents were female. Only about 24, almost 25% consisted of male respondents. The educational background was very well diverse, if you want to say that, with the highest percentage being individuals that have a bachelor's degree, and quite even between individuals that had a master's degree and also non-university professional certificates. And a smaller portion consisted of people that only their education level goes up to secondary school. Some additional demographics for you. 34% of those that responded consider themselves married. 40% single, 15% living together, not married, and 9% divorced. So we had quite a good, I would say, a good diverse as far as educational background and marital status goes. So the results. I want to share with you the result. I want to share with you the results. What I want to actually specifically state, and you'll see it in a bit, some of the results were expected specifically as far as how people spending behavior changed during that period. And I'll talk about that in a bit. But just to start with some basic results, 80% of the respondents agreed that the COVID-19 lockdown changed their spending behavior, which is quite high. 44% of the respondents stated that they saved due to the COVID-19 lockdown being indoors. They saved on average up to 250 guilders a month. And 22% of the respondents stated that they saved on average up to 500 guilders. There were some also smaller, a smaller percentage of those that participated in the study that stated that they saved upwards to 750 guilders and even up to 1,000 guilders a month. Okay, but those were smaller percentages. But I want to bring that up because there was quite a lot of information shared during the survey stating that people did end up as spending less or saving money. Okay, so the top 3 expenses that decreased due to the COVID-19 lockdown included, and these are very, very logically, I would think, logical. Gas. We were driving twice a week. If you're lucky, if you have 2 individuals in the household at the time with different license plate, you could leave 4 times a week. But one of the top 3 expenses that decreased due to the COVID-19 lockdown, according to the respondents of the survey, included gasoline, 85% of all respondents, eating out, breakfast, lunch, dinner at restaurants. We all know here we like in the morning to go get a pastichi, a juice, or a Johnny cake. We weren't out as much, so we couldn't spend. So 80% of all respondents stated that that particular expense related to eating out also went down. And the third one is personal care, barbershops, beauty salons, spas, etc. I didn't go to a barbershop at all during that time, and I normally go to a barbershop every week. That's a discussion I have with my wife all the time because she tells me, why do you need a haircut every week? But I get a haircut every week because it makes me feel good about myself. So during that period of time, I had a lot of hair, but eventually I had a cousin that would come to the house and cut my hair. But just to illustrate again, these are things that we spend money on a daily basis, very normal. And when we have a constraint of a pandemic, you can see that it impacts how we actually spend on these 3 main items. Okay. On the contrary, what were the expenses that actually went up? And very logical again. Groceries. 82% of all respondents stated that their grocery bill went up. And utilities, 63% of all respondents stated that their utilities, water, especially electricity or more at home, went up. On a personal note, groceries for me actually went down in my household, because normally we tend to shop with a grocery list, excuse me. And in my family, in my household, we actually were even tighter during the pandemic on how we were spending on groceries. So I didn't fit that this particular data with my own household, but it's still quite high. 82% of all respondents stated they went, grocery expenses went up. Okay. 72% of the respondents indicated that COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown will prompt them to make permanent changes to their spending behavior, which is quite high. I'm very suspicious on this particular data because I get the feeling that once we got out of lockdown, many individuals probably reverted back to the mean, meaning reverted back to how they were spending pre-COVID times. It would be great to do a study now or in the longer run to see if this data still holds strong or true. Also, many respondents indicated that the COVID-19 lockdown made them think more critically about how they budget and how they spend on a monthly basis. This ties back into financial resilience, which is the main theme today. It's paying more attention on, okay, how do I spend? Am I saving? Am I investing? Just giving people, unfortunately with the pandemic, with all the negative thing it brought with it, it also made people more conscious. Okay, how do I spend? Am I spending too much? Where should I cut down on my expenses, etc. Okay, last thing I want to share with you guys is we had basic questions. They were multiple choice questions, dispersion categories, but we had one open-ended question at the end. And that question was, what else would change once the COVID-19 lockdown is over, specifically from a financial behavioral perspective? Okay, so the most frequent answers, we got a lot of answers. Everybody was able to actually type in their answer to this question. But the most frequent answers that came up, were people said they would spend more consciously. They would save more, and more importantly, they would start budgeting. Okay, budgeting in relation to lowering expenses relating to dining out, buying clothing and shoes. I'm assuming you go to the mall to do that, and have a budget for buying groceries. Okay, this is my presentation. I thank you very much again for the opportunity. I hope you enjoyed it. I know we have to walk very fast through this process. We have other people presenting, but I look forward to any questions you have in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Idira, for your presentation and for your insights regarding your research. I would now like to pass the words to Mr. Karim Saab, who will also give a presentation. Remember to unmute yourself when you're going to present.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank the Central Bank and the University of Curaçao for this opportunity to be presenting the results of my research. The topic of my research was learn before you spend. The financial determinants of financial resilience on Curacao during the COVID-19. My research was aimed at millennials because millennials are the catalyst of change for the future. So our ancestors always used to tell us, "Tradam wara awa." So this saying represents a big part of being financially resilient. It means to prepare and have water when the times of drought comes. So basically to create reserve funds for times of financial distress. So excuse me. Yes, this is my presentation outline. This is my presentation outline. I will be talking today about financial resilience, financial literacy. I will be presenting the results of the financial big three questions that I administered, and also the levels of financial fragility that I have assessed. I will be presenting also the results of the short-term, medium-term, and long-term analysis, the limitations of the study, the conclusions, recommendations, and of course, the importance of the study. So what is financial resilience? According to McKnight, it is the ability to cope with the negative impacts of money or drastic changes in the way money is spent, or to quickly bounce back from financial hardships, is referred to as financial resilience. So in my research, I have done a couple of statements to measure, to indicate the level of financial resilience of the millennials. So the overall finding is that most of the respondents are financially resilient. And this was expected because according to the research of Ana Maria Luzardi, respondents with high education are more likely to be more financially literate. And the respondents that I had in my research were of higher education. So financial literacy. The big three questions of financial literacy, most known as the ABC of personal finance of Ana Maria Luzardi, which has been used in countless research and is considered as the benchmark to measure financial literacy, is the principle that I have used. I have measured the compound interest knowledge, the inflation, and the stock risk knowledge. The results were expected because according to previous research of Mrs. Ana Maria Luzardi, higher education levels are positively correlated with higher levels of financial literacy. So basically the research, the way that I divided the research was that I assessed whether the respondents were either financially literate, financially illiterate, or completely financially literate. They were considered financially literate if they had two of these three questions correct. And they were considered completely financially literate if they had all of the three responses correct. Basically, 84% of my sample that I researched were financially literate, and 16% were financially illiterate, and 46% of the respondents were completely financially literate. So after that, I decided to measure the levels of financial fragility. What were the levels of financial fragility? According to the, if you see on my screen on the orange and the orange and the, no, it was medium financial shock. Yes, the graph's intention was to measure whether respondents could withstand a medium financial shock. COVID is not a medium financial shock, but it's an approximation to see how the levels of the respondents were, how their financial position was. And 30.3% of the respondents were considered financially fragile. And yeah, the responses who are financially fragile would have had a hard time, would have hard times during crisis situations. But it's this result also coincides with Ana Maria Luzardi's claims that she states that especially young and lower income people are vulnerable to financial fragility, but also people from the middle class who have higher education, and most of my respondents had higher education. This result is expected. So what was my research framework? My research framework was to get an overall view of the spending behavior of the millennials on Curaçao during COVID-19. I divided these three spending behaviors between short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Short-term being monthly expenses, medium-term being the housing target of people, and long-term being the influence of retirement on investments of people. So after measuring all of these, the most remarkable finding, or the most important variable that had a significant p-value, was on the short term from monthly expenses. It showed that education had a significant role in how people were conducting their monthly expenses. This result came upon when I did a regression analysis, and yes. And for sub-question 2 and sub-question 3, the results, the variables that I used didn't have a significant impact. This might be that because the effects of COVID-19 are so unprecedented that even the IMF director or the IMF webpage keeps on changing its statements about the expected results, and even economists cannot comprehend or accurately predict what the effects or the impact will be of this pandemic. So it's most likely the time also, because we are still in the pandemic, it's possible that people didn't have the chance yet to change their housing, the way they spend about their housing targets. So why didn't I get a significant result in the analysis for retirement investments? It might be that housing and retirement were not very good proxies for this research. So what were the limitations of this research? The limitations were that the data, first of all, the data was collected in Google Forms, an online web-based survey of 83 respondents, and snowball sampling was used in order to get the desired demographic, which was millennials, and whom were living on Curaçao. So yes, as I already stated, because we are still in the crisis, citizens did not get the chance yet to change or adjust their spending behavior around their housing expenses. And yes, the result of sub-question 3, to what extent did people change their their housing, their retirement investments, citizens on Curacao have a predefined pension plan. So changes in spending behavior cannot occur because the plan's already there. So what are my conclusions and recommendations for either people who want to do future research about this topic? I'll start with my recommendation. It would be a very nice initiative, or it will greatly affect the society of Curacao if government focus on policies to educate the youth about financial literacy. So when it comes to making big spending decisions, like either buying a house or buying a car, or all of these major spending behaviors that will have a profound effect on the future of them and on the future of Curacao, it would make them more financially resilient if they would be more financially literate, so that they can make better spending decisions. And not only that, but this research concludes that the variable of education had a significant impact on spending behavior, especially on the short term for the monthly expenses. But yeah, like many of its kinds, the limitations of the study are that due to being conducted during an ongoing pandemic, it couldn't isolate the impact on spending, specifically on the island of Curacao. Liquidity assistance discussions have not concluded, which are also perpetuating or extending the impact of the crisis. As a result, respondents have little need to adjust to the medium-term and long-term spending due to the pandemic at this stage. Future research should continuously monitor expenditures for investments in order to witness whether the pandemic affected financial resilience due to financial literacy. Likewise, studies should focus on comparative analysis between various generations surrounding community islands, but not also that, but also if a comparative analysis is done on all of the islands, also to include or to consider the levels of education of all the citizens or millennials. For example, someone from HAVO or VMBO or VWO, so that these questions are not, so it's targeted to their level of experience. Yes, for future research, because of the sample that I got, it was people who had their majority had a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. It would be wise to create purposive sample, to do a purposive sample in order to get a representation of the adequate levels of education on Curacao. For example, if there are 30% people, 30% of the people who don't have a diploma, or 50% people who have a HAVO diploma, to get a sample that can represent the whole population of Curacao. So what was the importance of this study? The importance of this study was I wanted to find what does it take to create a community that is more financially resilient? Which spending behaviors are good, which are bad, and yeah, to find out how we can create a better community that can withstand financial shocks. The knowledge acquired could help people in communities to make wiser spending decisions and create a solid foundation for economic growth. Because people who are not over leveraged with debt can invest more in your local economy. So, as they say, that makes the money go around. So the results of this study should benefit the island communities through policy to mitigate bad spending behavior. To mitigate bad spending behavior and to make the Let the youths in schools know about the importance of planning and analyzing before spending. So making wise and timely spending decisions can help create a more prosperous community. And this research could help policymakers adjust their decision and mitigate the impacts of the economic downturn. So thank you for your time, and I hope this research has given you an added knowledge of how to trata para-awa. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Karim. I would like to now provide the opportunity for all the others that did not post their question yet to include it in the text box, in the chat box, excuse me. In the meantime, I already received some comments and questions, so I'm going to start. I will start with Idiral first. The question is sounds like this. During Mr. Susana's presentation, he indicated that only about 24% of the respondents were male. Why was this percentage compared to the female percentage participants so low? And do you think that it gives a fair representation of the male population?
That's a great question. I think one of the reasons behind that is it being a survey that went out online. You can't really control, you know, a good representation of balance between males and females. And to answer the second question, yes, I think the second question, what was the second question again? If it's fair or?
The second question was, and do you think that it gives a fair representation of the male population?
I don't think it does, because obviously you have a 1/4 to 3/4 difference between genders. So I don't think it would. It would be great for in the future to perhaps find a sampling strategy that would give us a better representation for both groups to be able to compare them. I personally, from my opinion, I would say, or I would think that males also experience some type of changes in behavior, in spending, and also saving. And why do I say this? Because everybody had to be inside. We couldn't get out, we couldn't do things. So I'm assuming that if we were to balance the representation from a gender perspective a little bit better, I'm not sure if the data would vary quite a lot, but then again, I can't say that because we obviously would have to measure that properly to be able to say with specifically. But that's a great question, yes.
Thank you, Idira. Now a question for Karim. I have a question regarding investing. Seeing that Mr. Karim mentioned compound interest, this question is mainly directed to the central bank. Why is the minimum amount to invest internationally so high, especially if it is not accessible to the average person in Curaçao? Well, now I noticed that the question is specifically for ourselves, for the CBCS. So I'll go to the next question, and then when we discuss the matter from the CBCS, then we will come back to that question. So the other question is, if you could research this topic again, what would you have changed in your research? This is for Karim.
Thank you for the question. First of all, I would have, in my Google web-based survey, I would have cut out certain respondents from certain sections of my research, because I wanted to analyze the situation before COVID started and during it, but there was a mix-up in the survey. And if I could research it again, I would do purpose sampling, as I stated. I would analyze how the demographics of millennials, their education levels are on Curaçao, so I can get a better representation of the millennials on Curaçao. Yes.
Thank you, Karim. Another comment / question for a comment on first presentation. Increase in online shopping also increased, including groceries in bulk size, cleaning supplies, masks, gloves, vitamins for immune boosting, medicine, etc. That's the comment. And then the question, what would you say regarding your results? Do you think that all your results were expected? Like, for example, gasoline decrease, eating out decrease, utilities increase, or did you encounter very surprising results?
I would say in general, the results fell quite in line with what I expected. One thing though that surprised me quite a bit, I think as individuals, when we are constrained to engage in normal behavior, we tend to limit ourselves for a shorter period of time. And then when things go back to normal, we get the tendency, as I stated before, to revert to the mean, to go do what we normally did, to spend normally, to do the things that we normally did. What was surprising in the open question that I had at the end was so many individuals stating, I became more conscious about budgeting. Yeah. I remember having this conversation a lot with my colleague, Guido Royer, who's also on the panel today. He'll be presenting in a bit. We talked a lot about that, and we exchanged information a lot because he was noticing the same patterns. You're out less, you're eating out less, and so you're noticing, I'm spending X many guilders on eating out. Now that I'm indoors, I'm cooking at home, I'm keeping things in check. Why don't I do that normally? Why can I save on those type of expenses a little bit more in a normal environment? So I think that's one thing that surprised me quite a bit, is that a lot of people that participated stated that budgeting is going to be something that they will have to look more into or engage in, and also consciously look at how they spend. I was very surprised to hear that. I was expecting people to say, oh, I can't spend the way I want to spend. I can't wait to come out of the lockdown to actually continue doing what I was doing normally. So that surprised me a bit, that this whole pandemic made people think more consciously, what can I do to actually spend more consciously and save a little bit more?
Thank you for your answer. I have another question for Karim. What can be done in the educational system in Curaçao to become more financially resilient?
Yes, to become more financially resilient. I think it not only starts with the teachers at school, but also for the parents to give the kids or the teenagers responsibilities, because most of the time when you turn 18 years old, you get presented with a lot of big financial decisions that you will do that will have a huge impact on your whole life, from either getting choosing which study to do. Most of the millennials, a prominent finding in my research is that most of the millennials are faced with excessive amounts of debts that they cannot, it creates a kind of chain on their feet that they can't move freely how they want to get to the next step of either buying a house or buying a car or to start invest in their future. So I can't stress the importance enough of giving the students responsibilities in schools, in cooperation with teachers and parents, but also to give them financial literacy classes. This is something that has to be done, because it's a waste to see all of the millennials who are highly educated but are highly in debt, who cannot do anything for your community. This this factor has a ripple effect that affects all of the different factors in your society, from banks, to institutions, to credit unions, and yeah. So it's something that should be put, more attention should be put on it, and it should be taken more seriously. We shouldn't do things like we've always done them if you want change. You have to actually change something. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your answer. I have one question coming in for you as we speak, but while the person is typing the question, I'm going forward with another question for Edira. The person asks, can we conclude that COVID-19 had a positive contribution to financial behavior in Curaçao, given that, for example, saving increased?
I want to be careful here to say yes, because I think, you have to continue measuring these type of things in the long run to actually, be able to answer that question. I think if you look at the short term, if you look at the data I presented, also just having conversations with, every day with people out there, I think for the short period of time, I think people saved money because you don't have a choice. And I know you mentioned, somebody gave a comment earlier, you could still shop online. You could still order things from overseas, which I agree with, you could. But I think when you look at our localized economy, a lot of Curaçaoan individuals, we have to go out to spend. We go to the mall, we go to the grocery store, we're out there and we're spending. So I think, yes, I would say during that period of the lockdown, um, we were forced to save money. We were really forced to save money. Um, but then again, I hope it's something that would continue in the future. And I feel, that's when human behavior comes into play. People tell you that they do something, and I got quite nice data from my study. But then what really happens in reality is remains to be seen, whether that is something that they stick with or it actually changes. So I wouldn't be able to answer that from a long-term perspective, because obviously we didn't measure that.
Thank you. And then the question that is the last question for this section is for Karim. And it states, do you think that if students were given financial literacy classes in high school, that it would change their behavior without them having actually experienced the hard life of debt, for example?
That's an excellent question. The hard life of debt. Yeah, it's not a guarantee, but it will make them more equipped to take decisions. I mean, how do you take good decisions without having proper knowledge? It is important to, yeah, equip your students with the best tools possible, and show them the experience of not making not being financially literate, compared to the advantages that are there from being financially literate. I mean, the evidence and the research speaks for itself. People with higher education levels and coincidentally higher financially literacy levels are more financially resilient. This is not what I'm saying. This is what the research of Ana Maria Luzardi is saying. So we should be able to equip them, and yeah, hope that they create the best. They do the best decisions. So yes, thank you.
And now for both Idiral and Karim, is there anything else you would like to add to your section for now?
Well, the only thing I want to add is I'm glad that the Central Bank, of course, in St. Maarten, comes up with webinars like this, because we need more of these events more often. And I know anybody on this panel right now would be, would love to participate in these things. I think we need to go out there and make people, especially the younger generation, and individuals that are older as well, more conscious about, what it means to be financially literate, what it means to be financially resilient. Because it's, as I always tell students when I teach them, look, if I have a class of 50 students, if I can convince 5, or if my information sticks with at least 5 of the 50, I'm happy. And I think the way we do that is to actually have events like this, present the information like this, because 1 or 2 individuals, it will stick. It's better to do something than not to do anything, because I think it will eventually make a difference, as small as it could be, but it does make a difference. So I appreciate that you guys are doing these things. Thank you.
Thank you for the compliment. Karim, would you like to add something else?
Yes, it's an honor for me to be presenting as a university student at my first virtual webinar. And I wanted to just highlight 2 points that were remarkable for me from my research. Was that millennials who had unpaid indefinite contracts and didn't have a job, did not get any assistance from government policies. This was remarkable because not only do we live as a small island development states are we vulnerable, but also millennials in particularly are vulnerable. The youth unemployment rate is very high, and so it was kind of sad to see that the government didn't think about the millennials who didn't have a job or lost their jobs. So it's important to consider them, and that was my last statement. And thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. And then let's continue with the second section. Of course, Karim and Adiral can also participate in the last Q&A section after the 2 other presenters. But without further ado, we will start then with Mr. Guido Royer.
Thank you, Shekina. Good morning, everyone. Once again, been doing some research on financial resilience this year, even before the pandemic. This research stems actually from a grant commissioned by the International Labour Office that a co-author and I, Yvonne Huang from Maastricht University, got. We went to St. Maarten, Dominica, Antigua, to look for business resilience as a result or as a consequence of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. And I arrived back in Curacao on the 8th of March, and a week later we were all locked up at home. So it made me think, well, let me replicate that same investigation framework on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting economic crisis. So the research is titled From Lemons to Lemonade, or very sour lemonade, I must say. I have a few talking points that I'll go through, and hopefully the findings will be relevant for practice theory and policy. So a very important thing that I need to set up with is that capitalism is the system that we are. Capitalism means that the infrastructure facilitates freedom of ownership with a specific goal to create profit. And we all know that when you have a specific goal to create profit, this means that you leverage as much as possible so you can extract as much as possible. And this is tooled on the theory of profit by Ginsberg, who says the sole purpose of setting a for-profit entity is to create and extract profits. This means that reserves, or having reserves, is an underutilization of resources. And these must be minimized in as much as possible because your goal is to maximize profit. Why is this so important? Because the first few discussions we had when we went into a lockdown is that all these businesses they don't have reserves. Businesses are not supposed to have reserves. at least not for events like COVID. You're supposed to have reserves for things that you can predict, rainfall, and you have to fix your roof, or the possibility of having to replace someone that's employed with someone on a temporary basis, or an entire team, but not for a complete cease of operations. So having reserves for this period is something that is generally, from a business point of view, very uncommon. And what do we take away from those organizations that go through crises such as these? There's this beautiful piece of literature by Marshall and Schrank, and it's given in the picture on the right. It discusses how firms recover from these adverse effects, and there are many moments in time that things happen. So you have the initial shock of the crisis, the first pickup, the dealing with the aftershock, and then ultimately surviving that aftershock. So businesses, they might demise or survive, recover, depending on what happens in those specific stages. So for example, right now, we are still in the middle of the event because the pandemic situation has not changed. There is some light that we have a vaccine, but still the vaccine might be a second or a third stage. And this is the reason why we're talking of such a long time for recovery, because these business models that we have for the old economy or the pre-COVID era, not necessarily will hold during the COVID era. For example, tourism, or at least mass tourism, and maybe in the future will also not hold, given the fact that we've gone through this process and we've adopted certain technologies and procedures that make life easier. Let me just give an example. To go to the SVB, you need an appointment now, which goes very, very fast. Before, we used to complain about how long we used to have to wait at SVB. So that is something that's going to be internalized in the process of SVB to improve its customer satisfaction. That's something of a technology that we're going to adapt and adopt for the future as a result of COVID. When we talk about adverse events, in the previous study that I did we were looking at hurricanes, and one of the biggest problems that we have with hurricanes is that we have physical damage, not only on the infrastructure that you use to conduct business, but also at your premises and your property. However, since hurricanes can be predicted, on average, every 5 to 6 years, we have a hurricane that disrupts our economic system in the Caribbean by much. We can insure for these. We have property insurance, and insurance companies know and have experience with this. The current crisis is to be considered a black swan, because the damage didn't actually have any impact on the property, but the entire economic infrastructure in terms of our software. Just to talk about this, tourism is something that 5 to 6 months after a storm hitting can recover. At this present time, we can still not recover tourism because other countries are dealing with their own situation with the pandemic and have to close and reopen borders, which changes the way we need to operate in this economic system. Black swans are major surprises. We thought that, when I heard about COVID last year, we've been in this pandemic actually for over a year. I don't know if everyone is cognizant of that fact. I thought, it's one of those things that's going to stay in Asia and life will continue and we'll be okay. So we compared it to things that we already knew, like MERS, SARS, and Ebola. It wasn't until in January where, it started getting close and I was traveling. And at the airport in Curacao, there were announcements in English and in Chinese that you started to realize, hey, we are more interconnected than we were before. And that is true. 2020, we're more connected than 2017 or 2008 when SARS broke out. It also has a profound impact. In our case, it was a complete cease of international mobility. People could not move. I've been on the island of Curaçao now for 8 months, which is something very uncommon. The impact was very felt specifically in travel and tourism industry. And for us as an economy, it's our only promising economic pillar because that's the only thing that was growing at this point in time. So we feel it extra. And we tend to inappropriately rationalize black swans after the fact. If you talk to people right now, you will realize that a lot of people would say, the lockdown wasn't really necessary. Now we have 300 cases and we're still moving around. So why did we do this? You have to remember we didn't have the knowledge we have today 8 months ago. So you can't rationalize using today's knowledge in the past. So what did I do? Specifically because these things impact businesses. The first, this is part of a larger project that is to be conducted with regards to business financial resilience. I looked at bookkeepers, accountants, controllers, and auditors to find out what is the actual state of affairs with regards to financial reserves for business continuity. So I asked them to what extent do businesses maintain financial reserves, what are the desired financial reserves for businesses, and why did many businesses experience immediate and acute financial stress during the pandemic and crisis. Present day, I have conducted 12 interviews with bookkeepers, accountants, controllers, not one auditor to date, possibly because it's still busy season. The findings indicate that very little, if at all, businesses keep financial reserves. Why? Just like I said in the beginning, consistent with theory, the point is to maximize profit. Now, in Curaçao, we have a specific issue that's going on. Credit availability is subject to some scrutiny. And businesses actually fund their operations. In addition to the economic, I don't want to slow down, but the stagnation that we have, businesses fund their organization, their operations by owing the tax collector. So basically, a lot of companies stay afloat by owing or by borrowing from government treasury. And why is this so? Because it's cheaper to not pay treasury on time than to take up the credit with any of the banks with the necessary scrutiny. So there's no, our situation, we don't really have to keep reserves because you can keep an open tap with the treasury that doesn't cost you a lot. What are the desired finance? This is something very ethically irresponsible because it's that same government that's now helping these entities to stay afloat. So this is something that's definitely going to have hanyarabu, as we say in Curaçao. What are the desired financial reserves for business? A runway of 2 to 6 weeks for working capital and reserves for 1 to 2 months are rules of thumb in our small and reliable economies. Why do I say small and reliable economies? Because nothing, in our experience, very little actually happens in Curaçao. If we consider we've never really had a hurricane other than the rainfall of Hurricane Tomas, we can safely say that nothing's going to happen. So we don't really need to prepare for long. This, however, is depending on how efficient you want to operate your organization. So changes might be observed depending on which industry you look at. And I take a very specific case for this question, which is Santa Barbara, because Santa Barbara is not an organization that can plan for a complete cease of operations. And it's not just a cease of operations, it's the cease of its core business. So oftentimes we look at Santa Barbara Resort as a hotel. Yes, it is, but it is an event venue. So this means that a lot of people gathered together brings cash home for this business. If that activity is not possible, no matter how much money you have in your reserves, you're never prepared for such a situation. You're not designed for such a situation. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that companies like these just decide to let's cease operations completely and do something different because you're not designed for this new situation. And finally, why did many businesses experience immediate and acute financial stress during the COVID pandemic? Well, like I said, you're not designed to carry expenses when there's no income. Some businesses depend severely on international mobility, the hospitality industry. And we also consider that the financial position of these firms was also not strong before. There was still a lot of space for hospitality outlets in particular to improve on having a higher ADR, average daily rate, and revenue per available room before the pandemic hit. So we are already talking about, I won't say struggling, but vulnerable organizations. So the key takeaway from this exploratory study is that resilience is very much dependent on the economic ecosystem, not only the firm's ability to recover. Right now, what's happening is that our economic ecosystem is being challenged. Whether we realize or not, we are part of a dynamic network, and we are very much interconnected, more so than before. And when this system is being challenged, no matter how strong or how well-positioned firms may be, they are prone to be shocked. For practice, this tells us that we need to explore for more alternatives to provide for financial resilience in terms of tax incentives. For loss recuperation, I look here at Aruba. They have started to come with a tax incentive to recuperate losses in 2020 and 2021 over a longer period of time. That I would like to suggest also here in Curaçao. And if the tax office already functions as a pseudo bank, we need to look at this in a different way to be more efficient and effective. We cannot let people owing the tax office become such a big problem like we have at the moment. And then for policy, we also need to learn to transform business models to depend less on the mobility of people. We have a lot of virtual, digital, and electronic services that can be rendered from Curaçao to the world. As substitution for imports, we can also focus a lot more on agriculture, especially if we apply technology, considering the aridness of our country. And we also need to look more at foreign trade through digital channels. So I think if we are helping and supporting our entrepreneurs to use more digital channels to reach markets outside of Curaçao, which is the main topic of my research line, we will be able to fit into the post-COVID world, even if a majority will revert back to a pre-COVID era. With that, thanks, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Guido, for your presentation. I would like now to give the floor to Ali, my colleague, to also give a presentation. And thank you also for all the questions and comments coming in.
Yes. Morning, everyone. My name is Ali Musket, and like Shakina said, I'm going to be presenting that part of Roadmap to Financial Resilience. COVID-19 has shed new light on the financial resilience of individuals, households, and small businesses. So here you can think, for instance, of the temporary closure of businesses, schools, public facilities, and as well as the instability that we had on the stock market and retirement income of the pensions. So while financial resilience is related to a range of economic and financial factors, sound money management and also planning are very crucial in this case. You would need as well the skills and resources to create both long-term and short-term strategies. So in light hereof, we thought it would be good for the CBCS to do a survey among the households, or individuals, as we call it, and also the business owners, so small and medium enterprises. Okay, so for this survey, we had as an objective to identify the current level of financial resilience in both Curaçao and St. Maarten, and also define the necessary tools to develop and or empower the financial resilience of the individuals, households, and the SMEs, so the small and medium enterprises. But I think before we go into those results, it would be nice to know what is resilience. So how do we define resilience, and also what is financial resiliency? So according to Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary, we define it as the ability to become strong, healthy, or successful again after something bad happens. So this implies that circumstances are expected to change or at least be disrupted on a regular basis, and the need to adapt, respond, and even thrive during a crisis. Resilience starts with a disruption and then looks at how to recover as efficient as possible. So that is resilience in a nutshell. So when you look at financial resilience specifically, that is defined as the ability to withstand life events that impact one's income or assets. During these times, so current period, it is more important than ever to know how to deal with and endure during endure incoming changes. So what we are facing currently during the COVID pandemic. Okay. So as a result of our survey, we are first looking at the business sector. So we called it business continuity projection. So actually stating whether the businesses are resilient or not. And what we have saw is that my company, so from the first question, my company is financially secure. A majority is stating that they are neither agree or disagree, meaning that they cannot state whether they are or are not resilient, right? I think that is a very important factor to notice, because currently businesses are not able to state whether they can cope during current period. And if you also look at the disagreement or strongly disagree, a total of 60% is not able to cope actually in the financial situation they are in. So if we look at the third one, so if your business temporarily loses its main source of income, you are able to cover the expenses without further leveraging your business. A majority strongly disagreed, so they would not be able to cover expenses without further leveraging their business. And also, if you check this together with the last question we had on this topic, so the average monthly income of your business covers the business operating expenses, then a majority agrees herewith, meaning that without the monthly income, they would not be able to operate their business, right? So in this case, I think it would be very, very important to check what is the current level of resiliency under our business sector. I have to say as well that a majority that responded to these questions were businesses that we have in place for 0 to 10 years. Right. So in that case, I would think that a contingency plan, I think we also mentioned that during the previous research, is very essential, since we are mostly prepared for natural disasters, but not for these types of instances or disruptions. Other questions that we had for the business. So what is, according to them, the elements of a resilient mindset? Majority agreed on keeping a positive mindset, so be able to cope during this pandemic. So how would you change your mindset as such to be thinking positively despite of the disruption? Next, we have flexibility, adaptability. So being able to change to current situations and still proceed, still being able to persevere and then cope during current situation. And also another one would be innovative thinking. So what can we do, or how can we use tools we have in place in order to be able to still manage, right? You can think of existing tools, but ways to use it more effectively, or the ability to implement, for instance, mobile banking or making more use of online banking systems. Actually, what we're currently doing, so delivering these presentations as well online is also a one way of innovative thinking, because of course, when you think that we cannot do these presentations or meetings in person, we thought and we went over to other means to make sure that we still deliver these type of trainings with the expected results. Another item would be, what elements should an economy, a country have to be resilient? Majority agreed on a good governance system. So people who have the skill to keep looking forward. So for our economy, how are we coping, or will be coping during this pandemic? And as I stated before, we were or are most of the times prepared for natural disasters, but in this case, we should be able to manage as we go. Also, contingency plan should be in place, so rainy day funds, very important. So I think in one of the researches, we also mentioned that it is not common to have this in place, but since we are now experiencing this, it is something that we need to take into account. Also, for the economy and the country, adaptability is also key. Another question that we posed is, was an open question, like what have you learned so far from COVID-19 experience in terms of resilience? So effective use of innovation and technology, that is key. Savings or having rainy day funds in order to make sure that you can cover your current expenses or unexpected expenses. Adaptability, so being able to adapt to the change. Additional streams of income, so if you have an additional job, or make sure that you can also have income provided via other means, that is also an advantage. And then also the ability to keep a positive outlook on the current situation. Going into the results of the individuals, households. So what is the best way to ensure that one is financially well and resilient? So people were able to choose, so what applies to them. So in this case, majority said that having sufficient income to cover one's expenses and make ends meet, right? So making sure that, as we saw earlier, an additional stream of income. Also, if you keep your current job, that is key to this as well. Also, other items that were mentioned, then using tools, instruments to manage one's money, having the courage to take risk and step out of one's comfort zone, being financially literate, which scored as well high, being digitally literate, and also other items that they mentioned. In this case, were savings, so to cover the unexpected expenses, additional income stream, and also controlled spending. With controlled spending, we mean like making sure that you are able to budget, right? And then also decrease unnecessary spending. So making sure that you really know what you have to spend your funds with. Okay, so checking the resiliency under individuals and households. Okay, so people agree that they are financially secured, so that scored very high, almost 45%. I have set aside emergency or rainy day funds that would cover my expenses for 3 months in case of sickness. They also agree that we would be able to cover for the next 3 months. However, when you look at the next question, if I lose my main source of income, I can cover my living expenses without borrowing any money or moving out from my house. Their majority disagreed. So here you see that the main source of income is very, very essential at the moment. People cannot spend more than the 3 months additional funds that they have put aside, right? They would be able to live out of their main source, however, are not able to keep up when there are unexpected expenses in this case. If I face a major expense today, equivalent to my monthly income, I can pay it without borrowing the money or asking family, friends, colleagues, or acquaintances to help. Here as well, I see that they strongly agreed herewith, or the majority agreed, right? However, this is by maintaining their current income. And the last one would be my income covers my living expenses. Majority again agrees with this one, meaning that the income per month cover as well the expenses on a monthly basis. So this means that we see that it is quite interesting to observe actually that we consider ourselves financially the resilience based on what we have set aside. However, if we lose our main income stream, we won't be able to cope. So I think for this case as well, it would be very interesting to do a research or further research to check whether we are able to cope. And also if we look at the households, then what will happen in case of loss of one of the income streams, right? So if we look at the households specifically. Okay, so on the lessons learned, we can state that becoming resilient takes effort and time. Resilience is a mixture of competencies rather than one specific item or action. Financial inclusion, so being banked, may not be enough to automatically make resilience. You need for smart and adaptable financial infrastructure. So in this case, if you have a bank account, for instance, does not make resilient. You need to be able to make effective use of it, right? So making sure that you are a bit technical savvy, know how to use the mobile banking, or having apps to budget. So making sure that you can also thrive on that area. Resilience has to do with having the proper mindset, which is also key in this case, and is a consequence of making the right choices and proper preparation. And the last item, as we said in the very beginning as well, so the mixture of competencies, so the mental resilience, physical resilience, emotional and social resilience are equally important in order to thrive during and after a crisis. So you have to be able to cope during the crisis by changing your mindset, making sure that you have a social network in place, people that can support you, or that you have the stamina to continue and to grow and also think outside the box. So what can you think differently in order to still thrive? Or how can you make such a decision by using your current income or current spending, but still make a profit out of it, or still have other opportunities in place, right? So a positive mindset is key in this area. On the road ahead, we see that delivering more and structurally relevant financial literacy education programs for financial resilience is important. And this was also one of the outcomes that we saw in the earlier research done. Awareness and outreach programs, so individual and business resilience, and the measurement of results of such programs. And we thought as well it would be important to have financial education in the national educational curriculum, so including those so financial literacy at school, so the need to strengthen individual financial capabilities, and also start herewith at a very young age. So make sure that we implement this in schools, having programs in place making sure that people are becoming more and more literate on the financial area. So to conclude, we state that resilience is more than being banked or having savings. Personal and business resilience foster community and jurisdictional resilience. Changing mindsets takes time and requires structural and continuous awareness and education. And financial resilience requires planning ahead and putting in place preventive strategies. So it takes time to become financially resilient, to make sure that you can still thrive during a disruption, right? So I think that the important part is making sure that you can still plan ahead and then have preventive measures in place, and also that you maintain that positive attitude and outlook towards changes. So I would like to say thank you, and feel free to pose any questions if you have them.
Thank you for your presentation, Ali. I received quite some questions over here and also comments. But before we proceed with the Q&A session, I would like to congratulate you all for your presentations because I received a lot of positive feedback. So let's proceed first with one of the questions that is focused on Ediral and Guido. It states as follows. This is a general question, but I'd like to hear Mr. Susana's and Mr. Royer's view on this if possible. Do you foresee or can you predict that a possible change in financial behavior will be a change in financial dependency, meaning shifting from being an employee to being your own boss?
If I can start with this question, I think financial literacy brings about first changes in how you spend money and how you interpret the spend money. If I go back to the question that was asked at Karim, if we educate younger people on money issues, I don't think they will escape necessarily the hardships of having debt, but they will be more at ease with having debt. I think the biggest problem that we have is that once you acquire debt and you're 5 years in and you're like, what did I get myself into? Was this really worth it? And if you have that preparation beforehand, you can make wiser choices, and then you can be sure that you made this choice for a reason. I think that if we are to introduce people to how to use financial products, on the other hand, we can improve their behavior to become their own bosses. One of the things that I just texted Edirel on this topic, we didn't even see the question, is that the smaller businesses, they don't have access to using financial products like investments to actually build those reserves. And if we would have those things, you will find different decisions being made by these companies. And it will also mean that they have a different way of leading their people so that their people can actually do things that are better. Companies at the moment don't really invest much in their employees in becoming better. And that perpetuates this dependency on your salary and the likes. But if you have, so this is how important financial literacy is, because you can extend it to different types of decision makings. And once you empower your employees, because you have a good financial situation, they too can acquire that financial stability and become their own boss or become a partner in your business, which I think is also a wonderful chance to get. So yes, this is very important to focus on, and this is why we give it so much time and attention.
Yeah, I just want to add
Thank you, Guido. Oh, yes. Yeah. Please proceed.
I want to add to what Guido is stating. You have a lot of studies that have been done over the past decade about financial literacy, and some show, okay, if you do expose younger individuals to financial literacy it may have an impact. Other studies state that it doesn't necessarily have an impact. Personally, from personal experience, I've seen people that are well-versed financially, have a degree in finance, and I have people that work as simple, janitors, taking care of a school, cleaning a school, and you see the individual that has supposedly all this knowledge, when they manage their money, they don't do it as effectively as somebody perhaps that has a job that never really gave them any formal training in finance. And I think a lot of it has to do also with experiences. What experiences do people go through to actually um, help them build more resilience financially? I think there are people that go through tougher times, learn how to handle their money better than people that actually learn about it in school. Albeit I think both of them works. A combination of them would be even more perfect. And to add to what Guido was saying, this concept of being an entrepreneur, a lot of people say, hey, Mr. A was born to be an entrepreneur. Mr. B didn't, so I expect Mr. A to do better than Mr. B in business, or running a business. Partly true, partly not true. I think a lot has to do when you are an entrepreneur to become a successful one. A lot of it has to do also on external factors. And when I talk about external factors, I'm talking about, okay, do we have an environment that's conducive for entrepreneurs to become successful? What Guido talked about just now, are there financial products out there available for entrepreneurs, households, individuals to actually build wealth? Um, and I think one of the things that perhaps sometimes doesn't help is that we have a defined benefit system when it comes to pensions in Curacao, that we put money in, we have this X amount of money waiting for us when we retire. And when you compare it to environments that have more of defined contribution plans, where you have to build up, make money and build up your own investments and invest, and when you retire, you decide how much perhaps you could have depending on the risk you take. I think these are type of I guess the environment that we're in sometimes forces us to learn more things from a financial perspective. But going back again, the external factors play a big role. I think you may have the tools, the skills to be a good entrepreneur, but if you are in an environment that doesn't really push people to become an entrepreneur, or don't have those resources available to push that, it becomes a lot more difficult for you to become your own boss, So, yeah.
Thank you for your answers, Guido and Edira. Now going over to Ellie, I have a question for you. Ms. Musket, the results on the business continuity projection look very somber, in the sense that businesses do not have sufficient financial backup to guarantee their continuity in certain types of crisis situations. This gives the impression that businesses do not have sufficient business management knowledge and/or skills. Do you think this is indeed the case? In posing this question, I would exclude certain operations like Santa Barbara, as brought forward by Mr. Royer, but obviously not all businesses are like Santa Barbara. So coming back to the question, do you think that this is the case? So regarding the sufficient business management knowledge or skills?
Okay, thank you, Chiquina, for the question. I think based on what we saw, indeed, we would be able, or would think, that this conclusion can be deducted from what I was projecting. However, I think seeing that this type of disruption is not common, not known to us, we wouldn't be able to just make that correlation. So I think it is a learning period, a learning phase for these businesses to make sure that going forward, they are able to manage properly or are better in shape in order to be able to accommodate these type of disruptions. So majority, and as I stated before, they are prepared for natural disasters, but not for a pandemic like this. So what might be the consequences in this case? So I think it is merely a learning phase and something that they have to be working on and make sure then that they have a contingency plan in place going forward.
Thank you, Ali. Another question, yes?
Can I interject on this?
Sure.
Because contrary to what we might think, there are companies that have very, very, very large reserves. And this signals to another problem in our economy or in our system, because we don't have options to put our money. So it's exemplary that, okay, some companies actually survive without help, and but I wouldn't go as far to say as that they're very good in business. Obviously they make money, but when you have reserves, the entire point of that is to invest them and get more money, so you can extract them in profits. It's very tricky to say. I wouldn't say that companies are bad. You simply can't prepare for this. I mean, I would have never thought that at this point in time I would have been on the ground for 8 months, and I would have never thought that bill would have been reduced by 80% because I simply don't have to drive home. I don't have to deal with traffic anymore. So these are very, very profound changes. And these are on a personal level versus business level are completely different experiences, because I don't have staff to pay, but certain companies do have staff to pay, and they have to keep to their collective labor agreement. So.
Thank you, Guido, for the addition. I will go back now to the question that initially was posed by one of the participants, but that was not answered earlier because it was focused on the central bank. I will repeat it. I have a question regarding investing. Seeing that Mr. Karim mentioned compound interest, this question is mainly directed to the central bank. Why is the minimum amount to invest internationally so high, especially if it is not accessible to the average person in Curaçao? Ali, would you like to?
Yes, yeah, sure. I was on mute. I think Shikina or to the person asked the question, that he would need to go back and check on the direct answer for this. But what I can say is that we do have investment fees in place if you're investing, right? So there are layers of intermediaries that you have to pay, or for depending on the type of investment that you have to pay for. So for that purpose, or being that the case, there will be charges in play that will make it a bit higher, of course. However, if we also look, like here, we do have also suitable investments for retail investors. So that is also a possibility, and may then be including other type of fees, right? However, but to answer that directly, we would need to go back to relevant departments and then get back to you.
Thank you, Ali. Another question for you. It states, is there a relationship between the responses given by the consumers versus the business owners and investors, given that you had 2 groups that you surveyed?
Yes, there is, in the sense, if we saw on the business continuity and also on the part where I checked how resilient are we, so as household or individuals, then we see that majority neither agrees or disagrees. So we are not actually there yet. And also if we add the other agreements, that strongly disagree and disagree, the majority does not know yet whether they are able to go. So, and as Guido was also stating, it is new. A lot of things are new to us. So for that purpose, I think it is something that we need to go through and check, okay, how will we manage now going forward? What will we do differently? And what is then the contingency plan we should have in place to cover these type of disruptions?
Thank you, Ali. Now for the last question, I would like to refer this one to everyone. So every presenter because the person posing this question did not really refer to a specific person. And at the same time, it's an interesting question to look at the different perspectives. So many people lost their jobs and didn't have an emergency fund. Many automatically saved money as they couldn't spend as usual. But for those who lost their income, they now must use their savings for daily expenses. What can be done to make people more aware of the importance of having a separate emergency fund longer than 3 months, maybe 6 to 12 months? Which presenter would like to start?
So the runway you need to have is on a personal level is 3 months, and it's advised. In addition to that, you're supposed to have your savings for savings purposes, for funding whatever you would like to fund in the long term, which means that a substantial part of your income needs to go to savings. Culturally, we're just not at that level. Or I want to say level, we're not in that dimension because we are more spenders than we are earners. We live a very comfortable life on this island. We've never really faced something like this, so it's hard to explain to someone that you need to be prepared. However, as a consequence of this pandemic, I think a lot of people will, have these stories in the future when people have to make a decision between spending or saving. That it's possibly better if you acquire things that can be sold over time. And what I do expect is that a substantial amount of people will be operating different things that give them different streams of income. So they will have jobs, they will have a we call a side hustle, and it is up to our government and policymakers to make sure that those things remain attractive so that people can continue to have income in order to save enough. Otherwise, should something like this happen again, and I'm not advocating for another COVID, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that it might get worse, and we need to be prepared for that moment as well.
Yeah, I think I want to add to what Guido is saying. I think in an environment where you have people that have lost their job, have lost income, it's very difficult for us to go out there as those with supposed knowledge to educate, etc., to tell people, hey, yeah, you should start building an emergency fund right now. I think what Guido said already before this, I'm pretty sure there are people that save in Curacao. I don't have numbers, I don't have data, but I think we also live in a culture where we like to spend, and you quite often come across a lot of people that say, in good papiamento, matraha, anto mi merece, que say, I did my job, I deserve this and that, I worked hard, I deserve that. I hear that quite a bit. And I think that's a cultural thing. So I think we need to start addressing those type of, I call them mental blocks first, before we can actually talk to people about, hey, you need 1 or 2, 3 months emergency funds in case something drastic happens, aka COVID, like perhaps you're able to absorb the shock a little bit better. But I think we need to start addressing those things. I think I saw a video the other day on YouTube, a very younger generation talking about, not spending your money on things perhaps that are not necessary. But we need to talk about how we spend our money, clothing wise, shoe wise, the cars that we buy. Do those things provide value? And I think they all tie into this, this talk we need to have about the importance of investing, putting your money in things that actually grow, putting your money in things that in the long run will help create riqueza, wealth. And I think that's the thing that we have avoided talking about a long time in Curacao. We don't talk about that. And I think we need to address those mental blocks that are stopping us from getting to those points. And then I think once we address those things, we can start talking about all these other beautiful things that are happening in bigger economies where people can actually have a 1, 2, 3 month emergency fund.
Thank you, Idira. Karim, you want to add something?
Yes, I think the question is very good because most of the times people do not consider that stress is a very prevalent factor in in a economic situation that is not very good. People are in a survival mode. They are not thinking about, hey, what am I gonna do tomorrow? No, they're gonna think about what am I gonna do today. So behavior, stress, also, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about stress, if you don't have a job, you don't know how you're gonna put food on the table the next day. It's how can you tell someone like that to, hey, you need to start saving? No, I think it's important to focus on not only yeah, talking about education, not only about the way we perceive education here on this island. I mean, most of the students here think you go to the university, you get a finance degree, and hey, you're good. You're gonna work at an accountant's firm, and that's it. No, we need to think about the future of the workforce. I mean, the future lies in e-commerce. The future lies in international trade. I mean, Curacao was used to known as an international hub that did investments. Why are there so many high tariffs that it doesn't facilitate international trade? I mean, all these tariffs should get lowered so that we can facilitate trade and make money flow. Just like I saying, Laura, it's not happening. And governments play an important role. And yeah, also going back to what Mr. Guido said about entrepreneurship, according to the study of Bregulio, we live in a very vulnerable state. Small island development states are very vulnerable. We don't the ability to create economies of scale. It's not very large. It's very difficult. So we need to find out how we can either with foreign aid or with working with bigger partners, international partners, in order to create economic prosperity for all. So yes.
Thank you for all your positive and great insights regarding this webinar. And also thank you for all your feedback, presenters. Now, a last question goes to Ali. In view of this pandemic experience, what will the CBCS do to guide regulated institutions to adapt their business continuity policies?
Thanks, Shakina. I think to start, we should create awareness under all businesses, including the regulated ones, or that with the central bank. So by creating awareness, like doing this type of webinars, posting out there, so on our social media platform, but also make sure that we check on the trends. So by checking the annual statements, do review for these kind of institutions, and then check what the trend is, and then make sure that we address those specific issues with that specific entity, right? So we do have those measures in place, and we are also communicating throughout the year. So with several investment institutions or the regulated institutions with the central bank.
Thank you, Ali. On that note, I would like to finish this webinar with a nice statement that was indicated by one of our colleagues here at the CBCS, who is also a participant today. She indicated, thanks for this webinar and the different results provided. Our vision for a better Curaçao, we all need to be financially resilient, and we should start working on this today. And I think that today, during this session, we received several insights from different perspectives, not only from the CBCS, but also from the University of Curaçao. And I think the different questions and the comments posed by the participants also provided in new insights for us to look at, and also the different perspectives from you all. So thank you very much, presenters, for being here today. Thank you, participants, also for being here today. And on the last note, also, one of the participants requested to get the presentations. I just want to check for everyone, it's okay to have their presentation on the website of the CBCS? Okay, perfect. So then at the end of this session, we will probably this week or next week, the presentations will be then made available on the website of the CBCS. So stay tuned and thank you all for being here and before I forget, next week, we have the regional edition, so Mastering Financial Resilience, but then regional edition, and that's on Wednesday, the 18th of November. So everyone who participated today, you are more than welcome to join us also next week. We will also have the Secretary General of IOSCO, Paul Andrews, who will also give a keynote speech, and our president will also give a welcome speech. So we look forward to see you all next week also. So thank you and see you next week.
Thank you.